Hi, everybody. It's Ryan from Pi Records. I'm here with Art from Music Recordings. How you doing today, Art?
Hey Ryan, what's up? How are you?
Oh, very good, very good. So I want to dive right in, and I want to talk about the history of music recordings and what kind of led you into the music business. What inspired you in your life to maybe get to the point where you wanted to be a part of the surf community?
Wow, that's a big question. I'll try to answer it best I can. In the mid '90s, I was working for Sony Music in the East Coast. I was living in Philadelphia, but the main offices of this particular division of Sony, Red Distribution (RED), is in New York City. They're still there, and so I would travel between Philly and New York, and they Red Distribution was the division I worked for, and they distributed independent labels, some really good labels like Epitaph and let's see, Relativity Records, Roadrunner. Maybe you've heard of some of these
Oh yeah.
labels. I'm sure Epitaph, you have.
Yep.
And I work with them. It was the early '90s, '92, '93, I think I started, and was with them for almost 5 years, and got to know a lot of the people that ran the labels, or employees of these independent labels, and that was the whole thing. It was indie, and inspired me to want to start a label. And I had a couple of friends in the business that were interested in, and I asked them if they wanted to be part of it, and put some money in basically to be able to do what we wanted to do. So this was 1996.
So what was happening in 1996 that said now's the time to go?
Well, I mean, as far as what we wanted to do, Pulp Fiction had come out a couple of years before that. I think it's '93 or '94. So surf music was had a resurgence, and people were interested in not only the vintage classic '60s stuff, what is called the first wave of surf music, and that's the stuff that was featured in the Pulp Fiction soundtrack. So people obviously were blown away by Dig Dale, and the Lively Ones, and Centurions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But because of that, there was enough interest for people, music fans, to try to discover or try to search for newer bands that were doing, like modern surf bands. And there was a scene in the '90s. It's what we call the third wave of surf music, and that's where we're part of that. We started, and we were part of that scene. There was a smaller second wave of surf in the late '70s, early '80s, but we were part of the third wave, and that was a big thing, and so there were some great new bands, and we had some favorites, and we had a plan to try to sign and bring in these bands to the label. And for the most part, we got, I think maybe 4 out of the 5 bands that we wanted at the time.
Great, great. What were some of those bands?
The Boss Martians from Seattle, that was one, with Evan Foster on guitar, and he's a madman. We saw him. We actually, on one of the other bands is Satan's Pilgrims too. They're from the Northwest as well. Seattle, Boss Martians from Seattle. The Pilgrims are from Portland, Oregon, and my partner and I flew to LA from Philly in 1997, a year after we started the label. And there was a festival, I think it was called Demolition Derby, and it was in Hollywood. And there were some great bands playing. It was a 2 or 3 day festival. And both the Pilgrims and the Martians were playing. And that's the first time we got to see them live, and we were like, okay, these two bands, I mean, we already knew of them and wanted them on the label, but once we saw them live, it was like, that solidified everything. It cemented what we wanted, which is for them to sign with us. And they did. One of the other bands that we liked at the time was the Bomboras from Los Angeles. They were already signed to a label, so we didn't get them. And there was another band called the Treble Spankers from Europe that were amazing, from Holland. And we ended up working with their guitar player, Phantom Frank. He's got a new band now called the Phantom 4, but Phantom Frank, the solo album, is the one that we put out, and that was his first solo record. And so, we got to work with these bands that we loved. And then there were some other bands that we signed to that were new, like the Space Cossacks and the Fathoms, which are two, amazing bands too, but they were unknown at the time. But once we, heard the music, we wanted to work with them. So.
There's some very visionary playing on the Fathoms and the Space Cossacks records. Ivan is transcends surf music. He's just a phenomenal guitar player and writer. How did you guys connect, and what are some memorable moments that you might have? Because he's a pretty intelligent guy. I mean, he's been around.
Ivan from the Space Cossacks?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a year after we started the label in '97, I got a call from Ivan telling me about his new band, the Space Cossacks, and I didn't know anything about them. And at the time, they didn't have any releases, but they had a demo. I think he heard about us because we were about to release a Shadows tribute compilation, a tribute comp to the Shadows from England. Yep. And he's got a deep connection to the Shadows. His father was in an actual Shadows tribute band in the 60s, where they're from. He was born in Croatia, Ivan was, and he came to the US, I think, in the mid 80s as a teenager. And, his dad played the Shadows a lot when he was growing up and all that. And so he had that connection to that band. So it seemed like a perfect fit. And I said, of course, I want to hear, whatever you have recorded. And so they sent us a cassette demo, or maybe it was a self-released thing, but it was just all covers, and it was the Shadows and maybe the Ventures, Dick Dale, I think it was. No original material, but the playing and arrangements for these songs were incredible. My business partner and I were like, wow, this is a really special band, and let's go see them live. I think that was the next step. We went to see them in Washington, D.C., because that's where the Space Cossacks are from. And they were amazing live, the whole band. Ivan, obviously great lead guitar player with a very special sound, and, hard to describe, I mean, if I can try to explain it, but the way he explains it is that it's a combination of Dick Dale and the Atlantics, which is an Australian instrumental band from the 60s, and the Shadows, a lot of, the melody of the Shadows and the echo sound of the guitar of the Shadows. Anyway, he's great, but the band was fantastic too. This bass player, Catherine Gray is her name. She was fantastic. See what's his name? Mark English, the second guitar player, the rhythm guitarist. He was great, and the drummer Doug, who's one of my favorite drummers in the surf scene. Anyway, so we were blown away by the show, and then they sent us some original material, demos, so original songs, and they were great. And that was it. And we had to sign them on, very quickly after that. So late '97.
They're pretty well known. They played some huge festivals. What is probably the thing that kind of blew you away about your experience with that band?
Well, I mean, I have many. I managed them for a couple of years too, which was fun. But so we got to go do a little bit of touring together and stuff. But I think it's the records that speak, the loudest. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, they're an amazing live band, and they get together every once in a while. They broke up in the early 2000s, but they still get together like every 5, 8 years or something for some special shows. But and so the show is fantastic, and they were always great, and people were like, they were super loud. I mean, there were some people called them the Motorhead of surf, and yeah, and it's like that. I mean, it was like people were just like crazy. But I go back to the music. I mean, if it wasn't for the incredibly good songwriting, then I don't think we would be here. It would be a band that's great live, but it was those songs that they wrote. I think Yvonne wrote the majority of them, but the other guys and gal co-wrote too. It's those songs and the playing that cemented the reputation. So they're very well respected now, but it's because of the music. They only released 2 studio albums. But they're like one of the best from the third wave of surf for sure.
They they accomplished quite a bit. What do you think that when they went overseas? What do you think a big highlight was for them and for you?
Well, I don't know if they might have toured in the beginning, during those early years when they were officially together. I don't know if they went to Europe at that time. They might have. But I saw one of the reunion shows at a big surf festival in Italy called Surfer Joe. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
But this festival is the biggest surf music festival in Europe, in Italy, right on the beach, very beautiful. 3 days or 4 days of incredible surf bands from all over the world. But I saw a reunion show of theirs a couple of years ago, maybe like 3 years ago, and they killed, and again, I just remember having a good time. We had a couple of rum drinks or tiki drinks or whatever, and we were feeling good. I was there with some friends, actually the Messer Chups, who were also on the label. They were playing the next night, I think. So we were there watching the Space Cossacks, and I remember just I was blown away, and I've known him for almost 20 years or longer than that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Uh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Going to Europe and getting on the biggest festival. I mean, it's got to be exciting to be a part of something that large.
Yeah, and I think that they played this festival before. Again, I think they broke up, in like 2001 or two, something like that. But those records, by the time they broke up, it's almost like it's all they needed to do. I mean, as a fan, I don't like to say that because I would want them to record again in the future and do some more records. But those records, cemented their place in modern surf, definitely the third wave of surf. And this day, they're considered one of the best bands. So, for them playing that festival in Europe, which I think they did a couple of times, I'm sure it was exciting for them, but I'm sure for the festival organizer, a guy named Lorenzo, he's in a band called Surfer Joe too, a very good musician and surf in a surf band that you should see if you get a chance. He really brings the authentic surf sound. But he was a fan of the Cossacks and Ivan, I'm sure, because how can you not be a fan if you listen to those records? And I'm sure he is. You can ask him, perhaps someone that you should interview,
Yeah.
in the future, Lorenzo, and he can tell you about it. But yeah.
Awesome. You did mention the Messer Chups. They're I can't believe like the chatter online. I hear about the Messer Chups. Everybody loves the Messer Chups. And
Right.
how did you get their music into the States? I mean, it must have taken a lot of legwork.
Well, they're from Russia,
Yeah.
very far away from here, and they they did a tour in 2016, I think, and it was their first U.S. tour. It took them a couple of tries. I heard they tried to come a couple of years before. It didn't work out because of visa, problems or something. But they finally came out 2016, and I saw a couple of shows, and I was already a fan of their music and their visuals because they have a lot of cool visuals and the look and their show. But I wanted to see them live, and I did, and I was impressed, really impressed, not only by the show itself, but how many people they brought to the show. They had a lot of fans, and this was their first tour. And I remember thinking, like, wow, I mean, I think I saw them on a Monday night in a little club that holds about 200 people, and it was completely full Monday night. Young kids, I mean, had older fans too, but like younger kids into them. And that was like, a revelation for me, maybe
Yeah,
for them too, yeah.
they're quite talented. I came to know of them through Johnny at Missing Fink, and
Right.
when I put it on, I wasn't sure what to expect because they were new to me. I would say 2018 or 19, and
Right.
and I was just like, what are they like? What are they doing? But at the same time, it was like a timeless type of sound.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a combination of influences. I mean, it's not straight ahead surf, and so I think what makes it special is that those surf, that surf, the basic surf thing is there, but they bring in rockabilly and some cramps, sort of, horror, you know, um, kind of dark, and some humor too. And so I think it's a really great combination. I mean, obviously, it's worked for them. They're one of the most successful surf bands, not only here but in the world. I think they've been touring before they came here for at least 10 years or more in Europe and other countries too. So I think that helped them. They had quite a few releases out by the time they came here. They had a fan base. Um, we just didn't know how big it was until we started seeing the shows and booking the shows.
Yeah. And any bands of note that they might have toured with that either in the States or in Europe?
Yeah, I think one of the highlight for me, and I'm sure it is for the band too, but before I started working with them in 2016, they've been around for a while, so I'm sure they've had their cool things that they did. But for me, the biggest thing that we've done with them is the Stray Cats had their 40th anniversary tour. When was this? 2019. And they invited the Messer Chups to open for them in Europe. And I remember as a kid listening to the Stray Cats, and so for me it was really cool. Great band, and I know the Messer Chups are fans too. So that was a great opportunity for the Chups and for anyone and everyone involved. And so we took that chance and that opportunity, and the band did a great bunch of shows with the Stray Cats. So that was great.
On a side note, have you heard how Brian Setzer is doing? Like I heard he had tinnitus.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. We saw him, like I said, I think it was summer of 2019, and he was doing fine, or it seemed he was doing fine at that time. And I remember the first show in Berlin or Cologne, Germany. As soon as he came in, arrived at the venue, he came to the band's dressing room, and he was like, hey, it's Brian. I want to say hey and thank you for being here. I thought he was, a really nice guy. He didn't have to do that. He's rock star, and he did that, and he made us feel welcome. It was just the band and myself. It was a small crew that we were doing these shows. But he seemed fine, and the shows were great. The Stray Cats were amazing.
Awesome.
Maybe like 5,000 to 7,000 people every night.
Wow.
Yeah, so he seemed fine at the time. I didn't hear, that he had this issue that you're talking about. That's I feel sad, but
I
yeah,
don't know.
so I'm not sure.
Well, I heard this before 2019. This was a few years ago, so maybe he
Oh,
he might have
okay.
been have it taken care of or something.
Maybe he just powered through these shows,
Yeah.
or suffered while doing it, but he still delivered these great shows, with his band. So yeah,
He's,
I
uh,
hope he's doing fine.
he's an incredible band to listen to. I get chills when the Brian Setzer Orchestra, their first record. Um,
Yeah,
my wife and I we lived in California for a little bit, and we used to drive up and down Pacific Coast Highway listening to that in our car,
right.
and our wedding song was Sleepwalk. So
Okay,
when we
nice.
heard his version of it, it was kind of like wow, and
Yeah,
it's just one of those things I don't think you can ever happen again.
yeah. I mean, a very special band. It came out at a time in music in the late '70s, early '80s, when a lot of labels were taking, the chance with some interesting music, because it wasn't just, the Stray Cats were not like, I mean, obviously the rockabilly thing is the biggest part of them, but it wasn't like a complete copy of the '50s stuff. I mean, it sounded modern, and they were young, and so they got a young fan base and stuff. So they were there at the right time, I'd say. It would be really difficult, I think, for that to happen now, but you never know. So
I want to talk about the Shadows tribute that you did. Um, the more and more I do these interviews with people in the surf community, the more I hear about the Shadows and their importance.
right.
What made you like what was your driving force behind you doing the tribute, and like what did you get out of it?
Um, I'll start by saying that the Shadows was one of the bands that my grandfather played. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier in the interview or not, but my grandfather was a magician, and he played, cool records. I thought, really interesting sounds during a show. And the Shadows was one of the bands that he played when he was performing in theaters. And after a while, I would help him by going into the sound booth, and it was cassettes at the time. This was the '80s, and playing the songs when it was the right time for each song, depending on whatever illusion he was performing.
Yeah.
Um, and so the Shadows was one of the bands that he played. So that I always liked them, from like 10 years. I was 9 or 10 or 11 listening to that stuff. And so when we started the label, we wanted to do some tribute albums, compilations, with some of the best bands that were out at the time in the '90s. And The Ventures, which is probably the biggest instrumental rock band in the world, and also Link Ray, which is another favorite of mine. We were going to, and we did a tribute to Link Ray, but The Shadows was the one closest to my heart, and that's the first tribute that we did. And so that was 1998.
And there's something special about it. I mean, it wasn't just a tribute, like they were involved to an extent, correct?
What? Sorry?
Oh, it wasn't just a tribute. They were kind of involved in some respect.
Oh, right. You know, their lead guitarist, Hank Marvin, one of the most influential guitar players, lead guitar players in the world, and certainly in England, where they came from, where the Shadows came from. But the rhythm guitarist, Bruce Welch, also very influential, a very good guitar player and songwriter. And we managed to get Bruce to write some liner notes for the tribute comp, and that was another great thing, you know,
That's incredible.
that happened. Yeah, and he listened to the tracks. That, you know, we sent him the tracks ahead of time, and he was like blown away that, you know, well, first of all, with all the talent, you know, all these bands that participated in the tribute. So he wrote some really nice liners that we used for the compilation.
That's that's big time, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was great for me. That's one of the best and biggest moments, you know, since I started doing this. I was a huge fan of the Shadows. It was great. I met him in New York City, um, and I think I had lunch with him, and you know, he was super nice, and yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Awesome. Tell me about some of your other compilations, maybe the Ventures. What you did some really special things. Um, from what I've read and what I've heard, you've had a lot of great
Yeah.
experience. Tell us about the Ventures compilation.
The Ventures Comp, you know, and I think up until 2000, the Ventures tribute compilation that we put out came out in 1999, I think, and for like 10 years, it was the best-selling release that we had on the label. I mean, the Ventures are huge, and it was a great compilation. Many bands did, you know, great covers of their music. And that was another one where we managed to meet their manager at the time was the drummer's wife. Mel Taylor is the drummer for the Ventures, and I don't know if he was still alive at the time, but I think it just passed away. But we met, you know, this lady, Fiona Taylor is her name, and she was really excited about this, and not only, you know, help facilitate some things, but she, you know, introduced us to Don Wilson and Bob Bogle of the Ventures, the two guitar players, or, you know,
Yeah.
Bob played bass too. But yeah, I mean, to meet those guys was also amazing. And I think they wrote a little bit too, a small liner
Oh,
page for us. So that was fantastic. And, you know, they loved the compilation, and yeah, that was great. If you haven't, you know, heard that, and maybe you can't find it anymore, that's because it went out of print along with the Shadows tribute and the Link Ray tribute. But we're going to be reissuing those compilations, those tribute comps, with the majority of the songs that were in the original comps that came out in the early days, and with some new recordings, you know, some new bands or newer bands that are doing, like Messer Chubbs is on the Ventures tribute, and the Madeira, Ivan's band, and a bunch of other great bands, and the Boss Martians. And so that's going to be coming out this year, those reissue compilations. So I can't wait for that.
it's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Um, I wanna take a step back and talk about the early days. Um, the Boss Martians. What what was it about them that made them special to you?
Wow. If you see them live, you'll know immediately. I remember when my business partner and I flew out from Philly to Hollywood to see this festival where the Boss Martians and Satan's Pilgrims were playing. My business partner, Phil, was like, he just went like that and said, "That is the future of this record company. You know, you got to sign, you know, the Boss Martians." And he was beyond right, because you know, I mean, that one of the most successful bands on the label, but also Foster, the leader of the Boss Martians, and I became good friends and also business partners. He started a new label recently. We're going to be releasing an album together. You know, the two labels working.
Yep.
But anyway, if you see them live, it's one of the most exciting bands you've ever seen. And Evan has changed, you know, his backing band through the years. I think for the last 8 years, his younger brother Eric Foster is the bass player now, and he's fantastic too. But you know, I can say that from the beginning, you know, even back in the 90s, you know, any band that played with him was great, but he's the fire that pushes that band to the next level of just incredible performances and music. And so that's the key. It's him, you know. He writes great songs too. One of the best surf guitarists around, I mean, that you've ever seen. So another really special band for sure, you know.
What label does he run that you're gonna put out this release?
He started an indie label called No Count Records, and I think it only started like a year ago. And we are going to be releasing a band called Tremolo Beer Gut. And the Tremolo Beer Gut is a band from Copenhagen, Denmark, one of the best European surf bands. And they don't put out many records. I think it's their first studio album in like 8 years. But we're big fans and friends of those guys. We've met them before. And when we heard that we're going to do a new album, Evan and I, you know, talked and said we should talk to them and see if we can put out their record. And I gave Evan the idea of working with our label to do a co-release with his new label. And he was into it, and it's going to come out, the Tremolo Beer Gut record, in April. So pretty soon. And it's a great album too.
Great. So the Evan in the Boss Martians, there is a shining moment I read. Huge deal. Big audience. You want to tell me about that?
I think you're talking about the Bruce Springsteen moment, you know.
Yeah.
This was, I think, mid 2000s, and Little Steven from the E Street Band put a festival on called, I think it was called Little Steven's Underground Garage Festival. He's got the Underground Garage on Sirius XM.
Yep.
And he did this festival where he brought in, like, I think, like 40 bands in one day, and he had a revolving stage, you know, with different backline setups. And it's crazy to have that many bands, you know, one day. I think it started at 11 a.m. And the headliners were the Stooges, which was their reunion, you know, their first year that they got back together after 30 years. The Strokes, Nancy Sinatra, the Dictators, just tons of great bands. And the Boss Martians were part of this. And the MC for this festival was Kim Fowley, the very special Kim Fowley, and crazy. We met him, and he definitely was a crazy guy. But so he was doing the emceeing for the festival, introducing each band. But I saw Bruce Springsteen, you know, on the side of the stage, a couple of, you know, bands ahead of the Martians playing. And I got the idea of approaching him and asking him if he would introduce the Boss Martians to the crowd. And it was a huge crowd, maybe like 20,000 people. I mean, it was a big festival. And he was super nice. Bruce was great. And he's like, I know the Boss Martians. I hear him on the radio. And yeah, I'll do it, you know. And so I had to go to Kim Fowley and say, look, Kim, you know, we love you, but Bruce wants to introduce the Martians, and are you okay with that if we make this change? And you know, Kim was totally cool with that. And Bruce introduced the band. That what was extra cool, I guess, or extra interesting, is that there was some issue with the backline or Evans, rig, and he was a bit late to start their set. And so I remember after, Bruce introduced him, here are the Boss Martians, and all the people were like, going nuts. I had to tell Bruce to keep talking because, the band wasn't ready to play. And Bruce is a complete professional. So he just kept talking, and he was like coming up with crazy things about, the Martians come from, planet Mars and from outer space. And, I don't know whatever he said worked, because it was a few minutes of like Evan trying to get the guitar rig working. And then he finally did, and it was a great show. But that was a special moment, I remember.
That's yeah, that would stick in my head, I think, for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I mean, living in Philadelphia for all the years I did, Bruce is such a big part of that,
Yeah.
Philly and Jersey, obviously, and
Yeah.
New York. So it was extra special, for all of us. So, yeah.
And I heard Brian Setzer spent some time in Philadelphia too.
Really, I didn't know that.
I'm not sure if he lived there very long, but I did hear that, and I wish I could remember
Yeah.
where.
No, that's great. That's great. I remember when I moved the label to the West Coast, I was feeling a little defeated at the time because I thought that the local press, when we moved in 2000, was, more interested in other sounds. But it's good to hear, I mean, obviously there's Philly's a great music city, big soul city,
Yeah.
so I remember thinking like, oh, maybe the West Coast is going to appreciate the surf a little more.
Yeah.
But now looking back, I mean, there was a scene too, and I think there still is, in the East Coast for surf and instrumental stuff.
There is a great local band right outside of Philadelphia in the early '90s called Grieving Eucalyptus that kind of touched on. You do you remember them?
No, I don't.
We played in West Philly a lot with them, and
Okay.
I think they were from Kutztown, but I may be mistaken. But they could
What
have
was your band?
my band.
Yeah.
We were Down Division. We were like a punk band.
The name sounds familiar. I might have seen a show back then. I don't know.
We played a couple of shows with a couple of big bands, but I don't think we were ready to go out on tour when we should have, and I think that's what stopped it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, there was the Boot and Saddle, the Upstairs at Nick's, places like that we used to play.
Upstairs at Nick's, that was a great little venue. I think the last time I went to Upstairs at Nick's, Dave Vanian of The Damned, he has a side project called the Phantom Chords. It's more of a sort of Johnny Cash, rockabilly, surfy thing.
Uh-huh.
And I think we saw him there, but that was a great venue. I mean, I think the Space Cossacks played there. Maybe the Boss Martians did too. So
They
it's
always
long
had,
gone, I'm sure.
it is, but they had some of the best shows there, and you could go there any night of the week. There might not be as many people, but there was always a great band there.
Right. Yeah. And it was upstairs. Nick's was like a roast beef place, right? It was like a
Yeah,
little deli or something. So this
yeah,
like the owner's son, I think, ran the bar in the club.
yeah, yeah. I have fond memories there. Uh,
Yeah.
so, in in your opinion, what is giving you the best? What's most rewarding for you doing this? Being a part of the community, um, being a big influence on musicians, and just what does it do for you to put out music? Like,
Well, I mean, it's being part of a greater community of labels, not only in the US, but around the world, indie labels, which, now that you're doing your label, you're probably feeling this, or you'll find out. I mean, it's not the easiest thing to do. It costs money,
Yeah.
and takes a lot of time to do it well, but it's worth it when you put out a great record, and people respond to it, and the band can get to tour behind the record and the music, and so it just comes together um, in a good way. I'm just like a little kid still at my age, remembering getting LPs and stuff when I was younger. And, it's the same feeling when you get something from the record factory, from the plant, and you can send it out to distributors or to mail order, the fans and the customers that buy the record. So I don't know if that's too simplistic of an answer for you, but it's music is something that's always been a big part of my life, so it's just an extension of that.
Uh, ha- this is kind of off topic, but have you played in any bands?
No, I tried playing guitar. I think early on I didn't have the well, didn't have the talent to play, but definitely didn't have I didn't give it the attention it needed to, practicing to get good at an instrument. So that's the main thing. Maybe there was, I could do okay with it, but I just never, gave it the time that it needed. I played drums for a while with my business partner and I, Phil, that I mentioned when we saw the Pilgrims and the Martians back in the day. He and I were jamming. He was playing guitar. I would play drum. No, it's not really. I'd rather be behind the scenes as far as music goes.
And I think that's one of the great things about music scenes. In the passion is there. It's just a different, like the role is different, but it's all one thing, kind of. If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
So, is there anything coming up that you might want to talk about that might interest people in your that are already familiar with your label, or something that
Yeah.
that
Well, we're going to reissue the tribute compilations, the Ventures, Link Ray, and the Shadows tribute compilations reissues. So that's going to come out this year. A couple of Messer Chups reissues. And then there's Don't Say Cheese was their last studio album that's coming out of vinyl in a couple of weeks or a month or two. So that's exciting because they always do well. We have some new artists that we recently brought in. There's an outfit from St. Petersburg, Russia called Draculina. It's a bass player. And she's a really good bass player, and she gets together with different musicians. She was in a band called the Black Lagoons in Russia, and she also played in Messer Chups for a very short period. And she does really cool arrangements of sort of like exotica, surfy stuff, but really well done. She's got some new recordings coming out later this year. Then there's a band from Italy, Wave Electric, and Wave Electric from Milan, Italy. Young guys. This is going to be, their debut is going to come out this year. Fantastic band, powerful.
they're
They do a
aggressive.
lot of original. What's that?
I said they're aggressive.
Did you listen to it?
Yeah, I listened to what you sent me. Yep.
Yeah. I sent you in advance of the album. Really, really impressive band. Yeah.
Yeah, I really, Um, I'm a fan of all types of music, but aggressive music always grabs me.
Yeah, definitely aggressive and powerful and fast. When we were doing the Stray Cats tour, the Messer Chups, Stray Cats tour, we had a night off, and we went to Milan, and the Wave Electric was the opening band. That's where I saw them, and I was pretty much hooked. But it wasn't until they sent me some new material, their new recordings, of original material, that I was like, wow, these guys, are, very good too. And so now they're part of the label. Then we have the Tremolo Beer Gut stuff. And then another very exciting thing is we have a band called 3D. And 3D is the band of the younger Lux Interior from the Cramps' youngest brother. I can't
Oh
speak.
wow.
Yeah. Michael Perkaiser is his name, and he's a great musician, a great guy too. And he recorded some instrumentals in the '90s, um, 4 songs, and his brother Lux from the Cramps did some artwork for this release, and it's been sitting around for a while, like almost 20 years. This artwork, and so we're going to put out this EP, 3D's EP with Lux Interior artwork, which is huge, also for us, Cramps fans that we are, and the great music that the band recorded. So that's a 7-inch EP that's coming out. And then I guess I can let the cat out of the bag. The Bourasseau are coming back, and we're going to be putting out their new stuff. Their first recordings in like over 20 years. New EP and new album. The Bourasseau is one of the bands that I wanted to sign back in the '90s, but we couldn't because they were working with another label. So now it's our chance to do it right and do this thing. So the Bourasseau are back, and that's going to be coming out sometime in early summer. So that's super exciting too, as you can imagine.
Yeah, it must like I was in I think we're about the same age. So I went to see this band Down by Law with Sam Williams, who's in Black
Yeah,
Velvet Moon. And I went to see them.
right.
They're like one of my favorite bands.
Sure.
I saw them at the Troc, and then here I am 25 years later putting his record out, and I never would have thought that
Yeah.
I could have approached them, but they're such cool guys. So I totally understand the
Yeah.
feeling that you get when you see a band and you're like, oh man, I would love to do something with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that feeling has not gone away. It's the same feeling that I had in the beginning when we went to see Satan's Pilgrims and the Boss Martians, who ended up being, on our label too. And now it's the same thing with the Bourasseau, 20, 25, 24 years later, it's that feeling is still there. The excitement of working with a band that you really like. And yeah, so I can totally see how you must be totally stoked to be, working with these guys, because, you saw Down by Law. This guy it's a surf project, right?
It is surf. I heard
Yeah.
of them when he put their first album out, and then it's just he's an incredible guitar player, and so it wasn't random
Yeah.
that it. I mean, I was a big fan of his and Down by Law, so when I asked him to put it out, uh, it was intentional. I wanted it to be special, and it is special to me because I've been a
Sure.
fan of his for a long time.
Excellent. Congratulations. That's great. Happy for you,
It's not easy,
and
but
and look forward to checking it out.
oh yeah, that'd be great. Is there anything you'd like to mention before we sign off?
Hmm. I don't know, except that it's going to be a very busy year. Maybe not on the touring side, you know. For instance, Messer Chups is, we had to cancel 3 tours last year. And I don't know what's going to happen this year because of the situation. I don't think there's going to be much touring going on, which is sad, for the fans and for the band and, for us too. But we're going to be busy putting out a bunch of records. In fact, because of the COVID situation, we're going to be, doing more putting out more records, and not concentrating as much on promoting tours because we can't do it. So in a way, that's a good thing for the label and for the fans, surf fans and rock and roll fans in general. Because I think a lot of labels are doing that. They're just putting out more records because we have the time to do it. So that's the thing. We're going to be busy putting out a bunch of stuff, and we can't wait.
That's one thing I noticed. A lot more bands have their own studios. They're recording during quarantine, and I love that. I love it because it's just more music. Like you don't have to wait a couple of years in between because of the touring.
Right.
Although I also like to go out and see bands play too, because Philadelphia is a great place to go see music.
Yeah, that's the whole package when you can see the live show too. And I'm hoping that maybe by the fall, things can get a little bit back to normal, but who knows? In the meantime, I know that bands are working hard and and putting out great new music. So.
All right, Art. That was very greatly entertaining to me to hear you tell your story and get to know you a little bit. And I hope this isn't the last time we talk. I hope we can do this again sometime.
I agree. Thank you very much. Appreciate the support. I know that you've been doing these interviews with artists and the surf scene and labels too. I saw one with Sean from Double Crown Records, which is a really cool label. They've been around for a while too. I remember talking to Sean back in the 90s. I saw that interview. I thought that was really good. And so I appreciate, what you do for the scene, and thank you.
You're welcome. I get a lot out of it too, because people I meet are genuinely nice people and very generous with their time. So it's not work for me. It's just me getting to ask like people that I enjoy their products. I can just ask them stuff and talk about music. That's all I want to do.
Excellent. And good luck with the label, and I can't wait to check out your stuff too. So whenever you get your latest releases, send them my way. We do a little trade, so we can keep in touch that way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Art. You have a good night.
You got it, Ryan. Thank you.